when you think about the illusions, when you think about people walking around with this inherent brain fog, not knowing what's going on or not having a deep understanding of what's happening.
These topics and these insights are pushed to the fringe. They're not on the forefront of people's minds. They're not in the everyday human consciousness. It's a byproduct of the way that we've structured our society. When everything becomes a transaction, nothing is sacred. And when you have systems of control, when you have power structures in place that depend on fragmentation, people are living in this world of manufactured scarcity. We have created this ideology, this epistemology that is quite literally anchored in delusion. I've got big shoes to fill. They're my own, though.
I love that. I love it. I love the sound of that. So I don't know. Where do we even begin? What's on your hearts today?
Let's talk about my book.
Before we forget.
Before we forget.
All right.
The Guide
Let's
to
get
Personal
into
and
it.
Collective Awakening.
Tell us about it.
So this book is kind of the culmination of really kind of everything. It's kind of it's my heart and soul. It's my kind of worldview. It's my epistemology, ideology, all kind of wrapped into one. And really the intention of it is to, in many ways, kind of like substantiate this movement, if you will, this awakening movement, however, you want to digest it, or however people, individually are experiencing it or going through it. But I try really my best to add a pragmatic, tangible sort of understanding of what awakening looks like, and I do so through what I consider to be sort of a coherent methodology of understanding really everything from our universal laws and the universal order, how that or what that is, and how that kind of exists relative to the way that we have constructed social systems, economic systems, religious systems, education systems, you name it, and how those systems impact the individual, and then kind of how that entire kind of ecosystem manifests itself in sort of our lived reality, right? And I kind of like in this space, there's so many kind of places to turn and people to listen to, and it can get kind of like disparate, and it can get kind of hard to nail down what's kind of actually going on behind the scenes at a really fundamental level. And I made this book sort of a piece that, again, tries to really nail down the story of what's going on here and explain, not just critique, but also explain and provide a kind of path forward to a more sort of nourished, sustainable way of life for both the individual and then for society as a whole.
Yeah, there is just so much in everything that you just said. Like when you think about the illusions, when you think about like people walking around with this inherent like brain fog, not knowing what's going on or not having like a deep understanding of what's happening and what all of this means, and knowing that it affects us but not understanding truly or not grasping the level at which it's affecting us. There's just so much in there to unpack. So where do we begin?
Yeah, and I, to piggyback off of that, it's kind of, for me, it's kind of like, it's in many ways kind of frustrating because I feel like there's so much potential for us as a civilization, if you will, right? Humanity. And it's kind of remarkable to me how, again, these conversations and these topics and these insights are pushed to the fringe, and how they're not on the forefront of people's minds. They're not in the everyday human consciousness. And look, I know why that is. It's a byproduct of the way that we've um, structured our society, how we have redefined values and ideology, and we kind of just accept it for what it is, and we kind of roll with the punches, and we're kind of born into it, and we don't look for, or not even that it's not even that we don't look for it, but I feel like most people don't really have the time and resources and energy even to pursue kind of a deeper discourse, because they are so pushed and pulled by the economic restraints, the financial restraints of just existing, and it becomes, we've created this sort of ecosystem of survival of the fittest, where you quite literally have to purchase your life, right? I mean, everything you have to pay for what you have, everything, in some way, shape, or form. And
Yeah.
when everything becomes a transaction, nothing is sacred, and we've lost really kind of a deeper sense of meaning throughout our lives, and any kind of, again, deeper conversation um, becomes pushed to the fringe. But also remarkably is that if you look at least it's my hypothesis, and I think it's well argued. It's actually that meaning and that deeper understanding and that deeper connectivity that everybody is searching for. They might not know it consciously, but I believe that it's this disconnection, this lack of coherence, this lack of deeper meaning that has created the trauma that exists in the modern age, and throughout contemporary society. So, kind of quick thought there. I can jump into kind of the arc of the book if you want, and kind of give you a framework if that's helpful.
Yeah, I'd love that. And before you do that, I'm so appreciating you mentioning, because I think that we kind of take for granted what people are going through as well, right? So I really appreciate you mentioning that people don't have the energetic resources to think deeper, because it's easy for us to sit here and say people aren't thinking deeper, people are delusional. And yes, we are delusional, we are a delusional people, that is the truth. But when the system has been designed the way it has been designed, it keeps us in these boxes. And you are a part of a product, you are also a product of the system, while you are trying also to inherit other products of the system, which is really weird, right? So you spend your time and your life trying to survive, trying to inherit these other products that the system tells us that we must inherit, that we need for our survival, that we depend on, when we really should be dependent on each other, because that's what we're meant to do, to be connected first to ourselves so that we can easily be connected to each other and to our environment, and so that we can all work cohesively as a unit to do life, to create the world that we desire to see, right? So I really appreciate you mentioning that the way that things are designed, the the disillusionment that has been created from that, like, it's crazy. Like, people really don't have the energy to think about these things and to dig deep, or to meditate, or to all of these things. It's hard. It truly does take intentional effort.
Absolutely, and it's unfortunately easily resolvable, right? But when you have um, systems of control, when you have power structures in place that unconsciously, right, depend on fragmentation and depend on a sort of myopic focus on work, on scarcity, if you will, on, people are living in this world of manufactured scarcity. It's incredibly stifling. And this isn't really a conversation about, conspiracy theory and people pulling the, kind of like puppeteers in the background. And obviously, this is kind of where a lot of these conversations lend themselves. But, a part of my book is really, or the part, my book really tries to look at it from, I think, a more accurate lens, which is the product, or the byproduct rather, is derived from, us collectively, how we have, for centuries looked at ourselves and our relationship to the world around us, looked at everything from, science to religion to our relationship, with the natural world, and our relationship with, our spiritual connection. We have created this ideology, this epistemology that is, quite literally anchored in delusion, as you mentioned, and it is not a neutral construct. It's not understood. It's not looked at and dissected consciously, but it actually shapes our consciousness. It shapes human consciousness, and it's not until you kind of stop and look at it and understand it for what it is that I think real kind of evolved thinking takes form, unfortunately. So, yeah, I mean, I talk I kind of first lay out, I talk about this illusion of, of separation, which you highlighted. And that's kind of like, well, actually the first part of my book is called The Fracture, and I talk about some of these illusions that we kind of live within, and that we inherit, right? Inherited beliefs and some of these frameworks. And I talk about this illusion of separation. I talk about how, we're living in a reality that is told to us through, again, many sort of markers of authority. But then in truth, it's not our actual reality, right? So when you construct a reality based on delusion, it creates massive schisms, obviously,
Mm.
right? And I then really kind of dive into some of the universal laws, the universal order that, in many ways, have, historically were relegated to kind of like esoteric schools of thought, or the mystery schools. Some other, you could talk about hermetic laws. You could talk about, but really, when you boil it down, they're really kind of the underlying governing laws of our entire universe, right?
Mm.
They're closely held by secret societies, and really kind of what you're seeing now is through modern physics, especially, and neuroscience. You're seeing that a lot of these laws that have been hidden or obscured are not mystical. They're actually rooted in real life, real,
Yeah.
tangible, measurable, scientific measurement
Yeah.
and study, right? And I talk about how, universal order, things flow through cycles, and they operate under laws of balance and reciprocity and interdependence, and how human systems are built on control and linearity and dominance, right?
Yeah.
And we kind of might know this, but don't fully appreciate the impact that it has on the individual and on society, right? And when societal structures, reflect imbalance and disconnection, humanity or human beings internalize that disharmony, that disconnection, right? Because in
Yeah.
truth, when we're so dependent upon it and we live so entrenched within these systems, we embody the consciousness of these systems.
Yeah.
And this isn't like a abstract idea. We have to. It's tangible. You can see it. You can touch it. Well, what does that mean? It means that, when we operate using, again, this sort of synthetic construct, we wake up, uh, using alarms. We fall asleep by screens. We overexert during the day in order to for monetary gain. We don't give ourselves rest. We don't honor um, any part of the natural rhythm and order that we have. That's the undercurrent of our being, not just
Right.
physically, but but our conscious mind, right?
Mm.
And and this is traumatizing, and people don't understand, I don't think, kind of the impact that it might have on you, or that it has on you. And I think that you get all sorts of imbalance and all sorts of illness, from psychological illness to physical illness to, you see all of these diseases, mental diseases, pop up. You see all of these imbalances in the endocrine system and the autoimmune system, and it was known forever that the mind, the body, the spirit, this is all one big ecosystem.
Yeah.
But in the modern age, we live through fragmentation, and we treat the symptoms, but we never look for the cure, right? And we
Yeah.
don't look uh, to the deeper kind of truths, the deeper meaning behind what's going on. And it's my belief, and I think I outline it profoundly in the book, really what's kind of going on behind the scenes, and that we need to recognize that we are not living in nature, that we are nature experiencing itself, or source experiencing itself, however you want to phrase it,
Yeah.
in this unique form. I mean, we're living biological spiritual beings, and we have disconnected ourselves from that knowledge, and we have sanctified industrial logic and a mechanistic way of living to to accumulate and to survive. And this isn't a story just for people who don't have enough means and who are marginalized. This infects even the quote unquote most successful. Because what
Yeah.
you find is, when this operates on a psychological, deeply spiritual level, and even those, again, who are the most quote unquote successful, they are in truth, in many ways, the most fragmented and the most
Yeah.
spiritually starved, because they're looking for meaning, again, in all the wrong places. So that is really kind of the first part of the book, high level. And then I talk about kind of like what awakening to these truths looks like, and why it can be so destabilizing, and what that means internally for the person. And I try to leave. I try to outline a roadmap for people to kind of anchor themselves in something real and tangible, so that they don't fall back into old patterns or revert to old kind of loops, where they try to over identify with something else. Because a big part of this awakening process is about disidentifying, where you're
Hmm.
shedding kind of the identity that you've inherited from your job or from your money, or lack of both, or whatever it might be, right? It's about peeling back the layers to uncover who you truly are. This is really the mechanism at play here. But oftentimes what you see is, you see people who might awaken, but then, and this is ever kind of present in the spiritual movements, who then start identifying with the egoic mind as, they're a fairy who's channeling Arcturian spirits, and then they're transmitting this to the world to enlighten us, because an alien spaceship is coming to save us all. I mean, so it manifests itself. There's different programs that you can adhere to. We're operating
Yeah.
under kind of this mechanistic, masculine program right now, but the abstract astral plane program is another program. It's about seeing through these illusions, right, and trying to find out who you truly are. And I try to outline a path for that level of introspection in a real tangible way, through everything from meditative practices to somatic work to breath work, to just kind of, and also kind of re-engaging with your consciousness and um, your deeper truths, again, on a practical level. And then I outline kind of like the path forward, and really kind of what's at play here, and how to re-envision a world based on this newfound understanding and coherence.
That's beautiful work. That's definitely beautiful work. You mentioned before some of the principles, some of these divine principles, or you know, like what the truth of what life really is about, and us being the nature, not being a part of nature, but we are nature. We are made up of nature. So, what are some of the things that you'd like to share with us about what you know about the divine intelligence?
Yeah, I mean, there are some, kind of there's a handful of universal laws, right, of this divine intelligence, just the way the universe operates. I think some of the most important ones we can discuss, which are, first and foremost is the understanding that everything is vibration, right? This was well known. Everything is energy. This was well known millennia ago, but it was
Yeah.
suppressed. We were brought up in this scientific materialist paradigm, cosmology, if you will, where everything was particle form, everything was fixed. This is again another illusion. This is not correct, and you're seeing this now in you know acutely in the area of quantum physics, and discussing the idea of the quantum realm, where we're now learning that particle form, fixed form, is not the fundamental structure of reality. It's in fact consciousness. It's in
Yeah.
fact a probabilistic structure from which matter emerges, not the other way around. So this is a huge kind of like um, rupturing reorientation to our reality, which has not been incorporated into the operating system of the way we've structured society. This is we're not there yet, right? So there's a lag, which is typical. I mean, this is kind of like how it works, right? And there's revelation, and then it gets integrated at some point in time. But we're kind of like in this in between phase, and we get to
Yeah.
deal with the brunt of that. um, so as these kind of old paradigms decay and fall off, we're stuck to kind of like try to usher this in, I think. Um, and I guess with that understanding, when everything is energy, when everything is vibration, you must kind of reorient yourself accordingly. You must understand that when you're talking to somebody, or even when you're looking at yourself, right? If you are this energy and another person is this energy, and we're all connected, well, you know, we should look at people not as their physical form. Not, it's great if a girl's attractive, right? Or if a guy has sculpted arms or drives a fancy car, but in truth, it's about this interplay of energy, and it should be about um, connecting on an energetic level, right?
Mm.
And looking for that connection on a deeper meaning, because we operate presently through a kind of like a functional versus a foundational reality, right?
Hmm.
Where our interaction individually, and then also the way the society is structured, is based on functionality. It's not based
Yeah.
on foundation, right? So again, it's we kind of create this externalized way of looking at the world, but the fundamental nature, the internal nature, is energy, right? So this is kind of a big illusion. This is a fundamental principle. Another main fundamental principle, universal law, if you will, is this idea of polarity. And we can talk about we have these
Yeah.
fantastical stories about the creation of the universe, all these things. Well, it's kind of obviously we've got the Big Bang and things like that. But these are great. These are great. And it's important to kind of figure out how things all started. But let's kind of like look at what we do know. And what we do know is that creation throughout the universe, across all planes and all dimensions, whether it's within human thought or human emotion or consciousness, or in the natural world or in our physiology, it all takes place through polar opposites,
Hmm.
interdependent polar opposites. So
Yeah.
although they're opposites, they don't exist without the other, which is a very unique sort of situation.
Right.
But
Right.
it's through this interplay. So, for example, to kind of make this practical, it's like, let's look at like emotion and thought, for example, thinking and emotional faculty, right? So like when we do something, our actions are dictated by our emotional feeling and our thinking, right? And if we're kind of operating with coherence, with good balance, then we want to have kind of like a balanced emotional and logical sort of coherence there,
Yeah.
and we will then create sound action. But if we're super elated or super depressed or not thinking things through or thinking overthinking, right? The action that's created as a result of that is not going to be kind of where we want it to be. And this is kind of like the ultimate struggle between these ideas of like success or doing what we want to do in life, right? This is kind of like the underbelly of what's going on. But this polarity exists um, again within our bodies. We have the
Yeah.
parasympathetic versus the sympathetic. We have again simple things like it takes a male and a female to reproduce. We have to sleep, we have to rest and then wake up, right? So this is balance. This is interplay throughout every part of of just our lived reality. And this is kind of like the ground upon which I focus the book on, because it's the most pervasive sort of inversion and distortion of these universal laws that impacts our lived reality, which is this overextension of the masculine principle versus the
Yeah.
feminine principle, which is also expressed as the thinking versus the emotive principle, right? And when you live with a imbalanced, um, kind of overtly masculine in a masculine world, again, things like meaning, things like intuition, things like this is all discarded. Even caring for the elderly, caring for your children, having close
Yeah.
relationships, right? Deep relationships, finding deeper meaning. This is all pushed to the side because, well, it's not functional. It doesn't serve industry. It doesn't
Yeah.
generate capital, right? So it's like, so this is kind of like the existential crisis that we live in today.
Yeah.
And with understanding this, or this, obviously this universal law, but these universal laws across the board, it's only then that we're able to cultivate a society based on the natural coherence of the divine, right? However you want to look at whatever that divine is. Let's look at what it is based on what it does, right, in our lived reality. And part of that is about also, it's not just about, again, this balance, because creation only happens when it's, in truth, it only happens when it's imbalanced a little bit, right? But it's about being in the right sort of tilt, right? It can't be so inverted. It can't be so out of whack. It has to be kind of
Right.
in this equilibrium, right? We don't want
Yeah.
static, but we want something that's doesn't erode our soul and our our minds, etc., our bodies, right?
Yeah.
So, but part and parcel to that are things like, everything in the natural world operates with reciprocity,
Yeah.
with right relationship, where you can't just tear down the Amazonian rainforest, for example, and then expect it to grow back and in a day, right? The divine order requires that we give it time, right? We
Yeah.
can't just constantly extract on a linear basis. There's a cyclicality to everything, right? So this is again another distortion, another inversion, and it's kind of like my framework that when we align with the divine, the true nature of the divine, which we can understand to be operating through these universal laws and universal order, this is when we can truly kind of connect to what we're missing, because it
Mm-hmm.
transcends multiple planes.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so on point with that. Absolutely, Erin. So, taking that into context, right? And putting it into context of what's happening right now with society, what's happening with the new developments, with technology, with whatever. And, people are talking about AI and all of this stuff. It seems to be a huge concern where people are trying to weigh how this thing will positively or negatively change our lives or our environment, our future. From your own perception, where do you think this is headed? Do you think, when you think about the grand scheme of things and talking about divine intelligence and the nature of things, do you think that somehow AI can serve some type of higher purpose? Is that a possibility?
I think that AI, like every other tool, is a function of sort of the collective consciousness that's directing it, right? And I think that in the current framework that it's being developed, AI, and I characterize this in my book, is sort of like the apex of disembodiment. It's a reflection again of this old paradigm way of thinking, of the scientific materialist sort of viewpoint, where again we have this over identification with the mind, where you know just kind of in present day, where industrial and digital systems reward um, logic and output and intellect. Well, this is only kind of one side of the story here. Human intelligence is not just again linear logic. It's also intuition. It's also emotion. It's also again these other deeper components. So it's natural that we've created this AI, right, to serve this again this distorted way of understanding what intelligence is. But to
Yeah.
create true sentience, we must look at what actual human intelligence is. This is not it. This is if anything a mirror into our again misunderstanding, and it's based on this illusion. It's based on this delusion that um, we are sort of that this is sort of the evolution of human intelligence. This is the evolution of again this
Yeah.
misunderstanding, right? So
Yeah.
if we were able to again bring back the inherent nature of humanity, of human consciousness into the fold, it could be hugely beneficial for humanity. It could be hugely beneficial. We could find ways to cultivate ecosystems uh, in parallel with economy. We could find ways to find deeper meaning for us as individuals. We could find ways to reimagine educational systems where we aren't looking to lean on AI to like replace the teacher or the instructor, where we aren't looking to lean on AI to replace like a mental health practitioner. I mean, these are kind of, or even like a customer service representative.
Yeah.
Things in life need living touch. We need to be in touch and in tune with other living beings,
Yeah.
other human beings. It's not all about efficiency, right? It's not all about profit and revenue, but this is what we've sanctified. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like interesting, like what are we willing to sacrifice, and when and who's gonna kind of like put a limit on things. Well, if we allow the systems of control, if we allow economic drivers to dictate our future, then things will not be put into check. And what will happen is, you know, pick any dystopian possibility. I mean, anything's possible, but it's not going to. It won't involve preserving true humanity and respecting true humanity in the way that it actually is.
Yeah. 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 It's just, as you say, there are so many possibilities there. It just depends on how we use it. Are we using it consciously with conscious, intentional input, right? What are we putting into it? What are we using it for? Right. And I don't think anything is inherently like bad. It's just the intention that we put into the things that we do. You know, yeah, sure, we can work together as a society, or we can work to build some people and keep some people down. Like, there's nothing wrong with having systems, but what are these systems based off of? What is the foundation of these systems? What was the intention behind the development of these systems? And I think it just goes back to that intention.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And you know what? Systems are good and crucial to our human evolution, but like you said, it's about not. It's about it's about allowing. It's about how can I phrase this properly? It's It's about the systems serving humanity, not humanity
Yeah,
serving the systems.
exactly.
This is kind of like the big inversion, and this is how we've structured our lives, our society. And we this is an old story, but it goes back to, in many ways, kind of religions. Religions were the ones who sanctified the institutionalization over everything else. Where, originally we had this unique experience, personal experience with the divine, right? In truth, obviously nothing exists outside of the individual experience, but your experience with the divine, if you will, right, and mine, right, are going to be different. They're going to exist in some kind of parallel, but it's going to be unique to you and unique to me, right?
Yeah,
So when religion institutionalized this, and religion said, oh no, that's that's not worth focusing on, that's not worth referencing, and that's not worth anything. You must go through me, you must go through the institution to experience a connection with
right.
God, right? This was the sanctification of institution, and it's maintained, that blueprint has maintained itself into the modern era. And what does that mean? Well, it means that a corporation's well-being is tantamount to the employees, is tantamount to the human beings who use their products. It's
Yeah,
about the shareholder and the company profits that matter. This is an externalized structure. This is not, but in truth, and we do this also on kind of like the economic financial level, where only GDP, or only gross domestic product, is a reputable measure of measuring growth, and measuring success, and measuring the goodness, if you will, of something on an
yeah,
economic level. But this is only one part of the story. What about what it's doing for humanity? If GDP goes up, or if a company's profit goes up a percentage, but you've enslaved 10,000 people in Sudan, or in the Congo, and if you've enslaved, or if you're employing sweatshops in Bangladesh to increase your bottom line, who cares that your margins are up X%, right? Or your
yep.
profits up X%, your margins are increased. Well, you care when you don't care when all that matters is the institution, or the corporation, or the government, whatever it is. We've lost this deeper meaning. We've lost this touch with humanity. And and it's all about at the end of the day, it's all about uh, you know shedding this externalized way of looking at ourselves, and our focus on the external, and kind of moving back into the internal. And this has been lost from consciousness.
Yeah, yeah. Just thinking about everything that you said, like the institutionalization of religion, of these institutions, how they have been sanctified instead of that internal that internal thing that keeps us all connected and all centered. It's like programming that has been done to just like kind of program it out of us. And we're just here, and we're vessels that serve the institutions, that serve the corporations. it's it's crazy, right? But I don't know, and linking back to a lot of things that people are talking about nowadays, and people are talking about the shadow government and what it does, and how it has, created these distortions, and how it has kept us separated, and how it serves the illusion that we're all operating under. What is your take on that?
So, as far as, let's be clear. As far as the shadow government is concerned, I think the shadow government nowadays is really a kind of combination of like this deep state architecture. This deep state architecture has always been to serve corporate interests. If
Right.
you look at like the CIA, for example, the original purpose, I mean, you could say that it was, to combat, this and that. But it was really to
Yeah.
push corporate interests and to shove Western hegemony down the throats of across the globe of other governments. We overthrew governments in Central and South America. We are overthrowing governments or trying to in the Middle East to this day. We've
Yeah.
tried to do the same thing in Vietnam. I mean, so we've manufactured war. We've manufactured wars. This is not conspiracy. This is documented. I mean, the Gulf of Tonkin incident was a complete fraud to get us into war. In Vietnam, you got people talking about 9/11 being manufactured. I don't have enough insight there, but and I don't think that it's uh, definitely the case, but there's certainly a compelling argument to be made for it. But this is all about, again, corporate expansion. So, and again, this is part and parcel to kind of what we were talking about before, where we operate myopically with a focus on supremacy through financial means, right? We have a central bank whose job is to really keep an economy stable, but to manufacture um, an inflationary kind of growth rate, which keeps
Mm-hmm.
people with
Mm-hmm.
assets in power. It also creates marginalization with wage earners who can't um, ever really save and then invest. And there's always a massive lag between the unemployment, the minimum wage or wage earners and kind of these growth rates. So it keeps people, the effect is really kind of this suppression. I don't think it's as kind of maybe manipulative as people might think it is. Now I know that there are powers that be that are looking to kind of push a communist agenda or who are looking to create internal schisms based on like this whole gender identity movement. I've read about this and there are certainly compelling arguments here, but again, I think the overriding main driver here is economic motivation, where as long as the people with money and power are pulling the strings behind our government, behind the people who are supposed to be looking out for all the people, right? Everybody. As long as those people are the ones impacting policy, you're going to get these effects. You're going to get these byproducts, and you're going to get, um, poverty. You're going to get marginalization. You're going to get inequality. You're going to get, you name it. It's going to be the natural effects because this overextended capitalist system that is run by, again, oligarchical or billionaire or whatever it is, NGO influence. Their interest is not in the common person. It's just not. It's in expanding their own individual empire. And until our
Yeah.
elected officials draw the line and say, look, we've been on this gravy train for a while, and lining our pockets was fun, but maybe we'll now get back to caring about people and their actual livelihood. Nothing's going to change. Right? This is where government needs to step up. This is where they have a real impact. And the shadow government is really, I think, operates on kind of like a federal administrative level that you have with these agencies that are bound to industrial complexes and that aren't susceptible to election cycles, because that no shadow government can hold its form if it's based on being elected every 4 years, right? Every two
That's
years, it
true.
just
That's
doesn't make
true.
any sense. So that's kind of how I see it. And again, nothing will change as long as our God is money and global dominance. Just it won't shift.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. One thing I think about a lot is clarity. As I mentioned before, that I feel like most of us, we walk around with this inherent brain fog. And sometimes I'm just like, what will it take for us to wake up, I guess? And I see that people are waking up, but you also talk about, as you mentioned in your book, about how that can make you a little bit unsteady on your feet. That process of waking up, of becoming aware of the true nature of reality and versus the reality that has been created and shoved down our throats, right? So I don't know, like, what do you think we can do when we come to this point where we're waking up, or we're seeking? I think we're all seeking anyways. We're always seeking, but some of us just aren't quite there yet where we can see things for what it truly is. But how can we how can we I'm not sure how to ask this, but you mentioning how unsteadying that can be, that process. How then can we come back to center? Like, what are some of the steps or ways we can begin to come back to our center? Because I think that's a really hard question too, because this isn't this is a unique experience for each and every individual, right? But just from what you know, or what you've gleaned from your own experience, what you've observed, how can we begin to recenter ourselves, gain some sense of clarity?
Yeah, I think that it's an important question, and I think that one of the most well, there are certainly kind of different levers to pull here, but when it comes to the individual self, when it comes to the unique experience, when it comes to, again, looking at how these systems have conditioned us and in many ways kind of programmed us, if you will, right? To and instruct us on how to live our lives, how to govern our own lives. This is kind of like the real mechanism here, where you get this whole idea about the matrix and the puppeteers. I mean, the real thing going on here is that you must live your life a certain way, because if you don't, then you die, right? Then you don't
Yeah.
survive. You starve to
Yeah.
death, or that's really kind of the real invisible hand here.
Yeah.
So the story is about, and it's about kind of what happens when you're forced to contort yourself accordingly, when you're forced to accommodate the system, not accommodate yourself, right? So it's about kind of understanding, first kind of peeling back the layers and understanding who you are, right? And you don't get to discover who you are if you are constantly, again, accommodating these systems, constantly accommodating and submitting to external control, to externalities, to the external illusory, reality. Right? This is not lend itself to awakening. This does not lend itself to internal coherence. So it's my belief that there's really kind of two main ways to kind of fight back, if you will. Right? The first is from looking at the first is from living with kind of within inner alignment, and it's hard to kind of like get there. What does that mean? What's inner alignment, or what's
Yeah.
integrity? Living with integrity is another way that I describe it, and it's really kind of quite simple. Like asking yourself, if money wasn't an issue, right? If I'd have to worry about money, what would I do? What would I want to do when I wake up in the morning? What would I want to create, right? And not like, oh, I want to sit on a beach, because at the end of the day, guess what? Like, no offense, after a couple of months on the beach, you're gonna get stir crazy. I mean, everyone wants what they don't have, but eventually you're gonna want to create. It's in our human nature
Yeah.
to create, right? So what are you gonna want to create? And it's about fighting for that. If you like painting, if you like writing, if you like programming, computer programming, if you like architecture. I mean, whatever. It doesn't have to be like esoteric and ethereal. It could be like really impractical, right? If you like building trains, I mean, whatever it might be, um, that's what you should do, because you know what? That will breed internal coherence. That will breed inner alignment, and that will bring you the harmony that you seek. And it's not, you can't, another thing is you can't do it alone. You need to find people to do it with you. People need to start looking out to other people and cultivating micro communities, where it's not this
Yeah.
massive overhaul where you're like, oh, let's buy 1,000 acres in Montana, and then like we'll live off grid, and it's not about
Yeah.
it's about re-engaging on a micro communal level, where we support one another, where we're not constantly worried about finances, where we're not constantly, worrying about ourselves. And then when the discussion of money comes up, it's like, oh yeah, like I can't talk about it. Right? This is how things change. Another way
Yeah.
things need to change is with where we give our power and where we give our energy, and that's through money, right? So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, look, it's great to buy a $10 T-shirt at a discount retailer, but you well know that it's being made through exploitative means. You know
Of
that it's being
course.
made in a sweatshop. You know it's being made. Don't buy it. Yes, it's super convenient to be buying something from some, whatever it might be, from this auto company, from this that. Don't do it. Buy from a regional distributor, buy from a local grower. Don't buy a car every 2 years. Don't buy 1,000 pairs of shoes. This is what keeps the system churning forward.
Yeah.
As long as you're kept hungry, as long as you're kept satiating this endless void, the system will win. The system will be sanctified always. This is where the idea of the power lies within the people. Power doesn't lie
Yeah.
within the people, where we storm the Capitol building with pitchforks and scream, and then they overturn all the oligarchs. This is not how it works in reality. I mean, this is what we're showed in movies, but in the real
Yeah.
world, this happens by dethroning through where you spend your money. Because
Yeah.
without you spending your money, they have no power. It's
Yeah.
very simple. So it's about being conscious of where you're spending your money, where you're giving your energy. And we don't get there until people are graced with knowledge and truth and deeper perspective and understanding. It doesn't happen. This is why kind of like why I believe that these discussions and hopefully my book are so crucial, because until people can kind of open their eyes and see things for what they are, they're not motivated to make these leaps. They're not motivated to make these changes. But
Yeah.
this is kind of really what's going on here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. People forget how much power we have, how much power lies in our hands. And you can get up and complain every day about the government, about the politics and the economy and all these things. But remember that you are equally creating it. You are actually creating it through your participation. It's as simple as that. And once you decide that you no longer will participate in that, then you'll see the change you want to see.
Absolutely.
And that's just what it comes down to. We participate in it, but we're complaining about it and thinking that the protests and storming the Capitol and fighting each other on social media and all the things that will do anything. No, like the protests and all these things, the reactions, they just show us that there is an inherent wound that needs to be looked at, but that is not the solution. That's not the solution. The solution is coming back to center. The solution is reconnecting with our truth, reconnecting with each other, and choosing not to participate in these systems. And that's
Yes,
it.
that's right. And it's again, it's not about dethroning or dismantling. Sorry, it's not about dismantling the systems. It's about just dethroning them and not being dependent upon them.
Yeah,
It's not about not utilizing them. I mean, they should be utilized, but they should be utilized consciously, where you're not giving
exactly.
up your agency, where you're not giving up your
Yes.
sovereignty to them, right? Like
Yes.
it's all, everything's kind of all about balance in my mind. And we are not. I mean, let's look at a kind of like an extreme level. If you said to somebody who's kind of deep within the system, like the everyday worker, right? No matter what field, accountant, manual laborer, it doesn't really matter. And you said to them, I want you to leave your suburban home or your city apartment and go move to a farm. And I want you to survive. I want you to thrive in that environment. I would say 90% of people will have no clue what to do, because they're
Literally.
so dependent on the systems, right? Like how to grow food, I mean, So like this shows you this level of dependency. I'm not saying that's kind of like the course of action to take, but this shows you kind of like what the actual dependency is.
Yeah.
And we're so dependent on convenience, and it's through kind of convenience and through um, this kind of like accepted numbness that we give up our autonomy, that we give up our true sovereignty, our true power, because
Mm.
we don't know of another way, right? And
Yeah.
we accept it. We accept and we give up our freedom, our true freedom for it, right? Like we're
Yeah.
kind of fed these illusions, like with the Patriot Act. It's like, let us tap all of your phones and go through all of your personal information because we're protecting the freedom from the terrorists.
Oh my God.
It's like how is this digested and not revolted against? I mean, it's comical, it's scary.
It's
It's really like
crazy.
it's like sheep herding 101. So unfortunately, until again these conversations become kind of more mainstream, it's going to be you and me who are sitting in the purview, kind of like scratching our heads and in kind of disillusionment.
Oh my goodness, Aaron. As usual, fantastic conversation. So good. You always come ready to deliver. I love it.
Kershia, you're the best.
Oh man. Okay, so what do you hope people will take away from your work?
I really hope that through my book, Before We Forget, The Guide to Personal and Collective Awakening, that they are able to reclaim their inner alignment, reclaim their inner sovereignty, and understand really who they truly are. And this isn't about some, again, like we're all souls. Yeah, we are all spirit. We are all souls experiencing ourselves in our physical in physical form, right? But it's a deeper conversation than that. It's about finding out who you truly are. What really motivates you? What really nourishes you? What really will sustain you and not keep you fighting ghosts and keep you trying to numb yourself and keep you kind of addicted and all these different things that we kind of accept to be normal, right? Like it's about finding that. And what I hope the takeaway from the book is that these are attainable and that it's just about having kind of the right guidance and um, seeing things for what they truly are and how they can be reimagined that you get to that place.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful work, Erin. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Kershaw.
Please tell us where we can get your book and anything else that you're currently working on.
You get my book on Amazon right now. It's going to be released in audio form, I believe, in 2 to 4 weeks now. And it'll be available in like bookstores nationwide as well. I think within a week. I think by the end of the month is when it's going to start hitting shelves. But I'm available on Amazon now. I have a podcast, the Evolved Podcast, which is really content based. It's on a guest host format where I talk about societal systems and inherited beliefs that offer a new perspective and I think can shine light on the way that we interact with the world around us. I'm going to be starting season 2 in a couple of weeks as well. So that's where you can find me. My website is theaaronscott.com. Yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Thank you.